Hey friends, welcome to Soul Cafe. It's Jim and Aaron. Aaron, glad to see you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I am
So
down at the beach, so I'm just
you're
gonna
not
tell
at your
everyone
house.
this
Yeah.
is beach hair, don't care. That's what you're getting. You might
Yeah.
hear some screaming kids in the background. I'm just
Nah.
gonna say I'm at the
You're
beach.
you're looking good. So I think I want to go there soon too, to the beach. So I think I
Yeah,
will, maybe next week.
next
But
week. Yeah.
so yeah, maybe next week when we do this, we'll be I'll be at the beach and you'll be in DC. And I'm jealous right now. So you can do that then. Is that good?
I can be jealous next week. Yeah,
All
that's
right,
fine.
that's good.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Fair
So
trade, fair
all
trade.
right, we gotta move quick tonight. One poll.
Yeah.
Ready? Okay, so
Okay.
one poll.
What do
This
you
is
got?
it. So you're on vacation, right? So I want to know, are people going on vacation this summer? So somebody already got on and said nope. And then staycay is vacay, baby, meaning you're staying home and then going to the USA. I don't know what counts for that, Aaron. What do you think?
I feel like there's a lot of people, renting RVs and going around
Yeah,
the
I
country. So
know.
I feel like maybe people are just using the opportunity to explore the good old US of A.
Right,
Maybe.
and then
I don't know.
camping is our thing, although
Yeah. All
the
right.
Rogers,
Glamping
they
sometimes.
always camp and they're there with you, so not camping. So
True.
that's not even glamping, what you're doing right
Not
now,
even
and
glamping.
then we're going overseas, so I wanna see if anybody's actually
Anybody,
going
yeah.
to do the Europe thing or whatever, and then they
Get
don't
good
know yet.
fares.
So, not sure. I think a lot of people are in that category, like, "We're gonna
Yeah,
do something maybe," but and then, what is this vacation of which you speak?
yeah.
People who never take one, so far, people going nope and going to the USA, and then now we're tied. So we'll come back to that, and
Alright.
I don't know yet. So we'll come back to that in a few moments. So listen, you have a special guest tonight, but before we get to him, we've got our regular, and he's got a sad, sad song. So
We got
what do you think?
Aaron. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good old sad song is what we need right now,
well, I
maybe.
think so. It's raining here, obviously not where you are,
No, well, the rain just left here, so the sad song is to send it off. Send
but
the rain off.
it's raining here. We have beautiful weather, and now
We
we're all of
have.
a sudden, we're wet and we're dreary and cold.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Aaron's in a sad mood. Aaron, you're never in a sad mood, really,
I'm
are
not
you?
in a sad mood. I'm not at all.
He just
And
likes
yet,
sad songs.
I
so
do.
sad songs make you feel happy.
They do. They do. It just depends on the day, but I was going through about four different songs beforehand thinking like which one am I going to do? And I was looking out the window and it's just raining and I just think it's a sad song kind of evening.
All right, well, then do a sad song.
I will. I will.
All right.
This is called Guardian Angel by Tim O'Brien. Well, there's no time I can't recall that picture hanging up there on the wall of a little pumpkin by a snake in the grass, and her guardian angel is guiding her past. Well, I lost a big sister when the picture was new, 1956, just before I turned two. I took part of my memory, added stories and things. I made her my angel, she has her own wings. I made her my angel, she has her own wings. She would have held my hand, she would have called my name. Too young to remember, I miss her the same. My guardian angel, I miss her the same. I don't know much about her, well, there's not much to know. Just 6 years of living, then she had to go. And my parents, they agreed, but somehow they moved on. And I grew up knowing my sister was gone. I found an old letter that my mom wrote that year, what my parents felt then. I think of my own kids and feel it again. I think of my own kids and feel it again. I would have held her hand. I know I called her name. My guardian angel, I miss her the same. She would have held my hand. She would have called my name. Too young to remember, I miss her the same. My guardian angel, I miss her the same. Well, I guess there's no time when I can't recall the picture hanging up there on the wall.
That's awesome, Aaron. So, so I'm going to have a guest on tonight. One of my friends, Karen Swallow Pryor, and her husband, Roy, is a really good musician. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, we'll try to get him on sometime. See if you can see him. But
I'd love to hear him play.
so here's the story. Back when I was at Rivermont in Lynchburg, I started Soul Cafe. That's when we started the Soul Cafe, and this was sort of a carryover to here. And he was our musician every week. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's
yeah,
great.
you got to
Oh,
meet him.
That's a full circle.
Yeah, you got to meet him. You got to
Yeah.
meet him, and actually, Aaron has to meet Karen because they're a lot alike. I'm telling you, it's in weird ways, but yeah. So always love you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Hey, we're
Yeah.
going on vacation next week.
You are?
We are.
I am too.
We're
Where are you
going
headed?
We're going to Smith Mountain Lake.
Oh
Ooh,
yeah,
that
that's a nice
sounds so
place.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can answer the poll.
Well, yes, I will try to answer the
Yeah,
poll.
get on and answer. See
You
what
getting a
can do.
house down there? Are you camping? What are you doing?
We're camping. Yeah, we're
Really?
taking our RV down there.
Oh, nice.
For
Oh,
its
cool.
maiden voyage, in fact, because it's been
Wow.
stuck in our driveway for the past 3
Serving
plus
as your
months.
office, you got to clear up all your files and get your laptop pulled away.
I did that a while back.
So
Actually.
are you gonna have internet?
I will have, according to Campendium, I will have 1 bar of 4G LTE.
Well, see, I'm gonna be on vacation next week, and I'm still gonna be on Soul Cafe. So I'm just saying.
I'm on vacation right now, and I'm on. I mean,
Not you though, right?
Aaron.
I'll jump in the truck and drive about 50 miles or so.
No, okay, maybe I'll see if we can get Roy.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much for always being part of Soul Cafe. So, Aaron, you want to see the poll? Let's see. Let's
Let's see it.
let's see if we can change Aaron to attendee.
Aaron.
All right. So people have been responding a lot here, but it's moving, but it's moving in only a few directions. Nobody's going overseas. So
Well, I mean, that wouldn't that surprise you if someone said that?
I don't know.
I feel like
I've thought about it. Like the prices are good. You know, I've thought about it. Like,
Yeah.
can I wear a mask for 8-9 hours to be somewhere that's pretty cool? I think I could do that. So anyway, so Polev.com, Jim Baucom 277. You can text me at Jim Baucom 277 to 22333. A lot of nopes there, and a lot of going to the USA's, and a lot of people. Well, a few people staying home, and people who don't know. Nobody said camping because the Rogers are there with you with kids. That's why. And
Well, and the Torgesons haven't responded
well,
yet.
they could respond in 2 ways. That could be going to the USA or whatever, going
Well, theirs went
overseas
last
or.
weekend. I mean, people are going. I feel like they said the campgrounds were really packed last Friday and Saturday night.
Oh, I know. That's why nobody's going. That's the thing. That's exactly why.
I say get out there. It's in nature. They say it's okay.
All right. So your friend Tom DeVries, he's GLS, Global Leadership Summit.
Network and then Global Leadership Summit. Yep.
Yeah, and we're big into that. We've done that for I think
Yeah.
this is our 7th year or something
Yep.
like that. It's hard to believe. And you've been big involved in that. And so they're going to have to go a little different this year. So let's bring him
Yeah.
in and
Hi, Tom.
let's talk GLS.
Now you're on mute, Tom, so you're gonna have to pull yourself off
There
mute.
we go.
There we go.
Hey,
There
good
he is.
deal. Hey, Aaron. Hey,
Yeah.
Jim. Good to be with you.
Good to see you,
Yeah.
Tom.
Thanks for being
Thanks.
here. I'm so surprised. It's so hard for me to believe that we just saw each other 6 short months ago when we got together thinking, how are we going to expand the prison program? What are we going to do? And isn't it insane how much has changed in just 6 short months?
It's amazing, Aaron. I mean, we were looking. We had 83 prisons that we were in last year, and we had this great vision to be able to expand that. And we had talked and planned and prayed about that in December. And I think God had other plans, but we're still going to be doing a lot of prisons this year. And
Yeah.
certainly the world's changed between then and now.
Yeah. So, I mean, for those of you who are tuning in who maybe haven't seen the Global Leadership Summit, just to give a quick overview, it is put on by the Global Leadership Network, which is affiliated with Willow Creek up in Chicago, or just outside Chicago. And yeah, Columbia. That's how I came to it. I came to it the first time I think I ever went and saw it was in 2013, and that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but that was the year that Burl Cain
Yes.
was on it, or he might have been the following year. And that felt like a big God moment for me, sitting in the pew at Columbia Baptist watching it, and said, you know what, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to go call these people up and raise money for them and figure out how to get into prisons and work with them. And I've been so lucky to be so connected to your team ever since.
Yeah.
We have a prisoner number, by the way. We're number
Yeah.
046. That's our site
046.
number. Did you know that, Tom?
Yeah.
I didn't know that, so I
That's
won't
us.
forget though.
We're
Yeah,
046.
site number 046.
Yeah.
Yeah.
046.
So we were just together in December because you got a bunch of us together that do work in the prison or in the program in prisons, which
Yeah.
is one thing that struck me is how well you guys might have actually already been equipped to deal with this lockdown because your entire thing is virtual. It's simulcast out to 109 countries already and 83 prisons, as you said. Is that right?
Yeah, 83 prisons. Actually, last year we were in over 130 countries and
130.
end up translating it into over 60 languages.
Right.
And it really has a great reach that way. And then, yeah, 83 prisons in addition to that. And
Wow.
so it's really great. In fact, I was down at Southeast Correctional Center
Okay.
in Missouri, right outside Cape Girardeau,
Yep.
Missouri, in February,
Yep.
right before heading to Germany, and then the lockdown came right after that. And
Wow.
have been in contact with the folks there and hearing about how that prison is dealing with the whole COVID-19 situation. And we were able to actually give graduation certificates to 140 inmates
Oh,
in
really?
February. Yeah, who'd
Oh,
been
that's great.
going through the Global Leadership Summit year-round process, and it was really cool to be with them and to celebrate with them and just kind of hear the testimonies of how significant it is to be learning and growing, even in that environment, as they want
Right.
to be getting better, and also when they get released to be able
Yeah.
to contribute, which is
So,
really
Tom,
cool.
let me throw in a question here.
Yeah.
So, we've hosted the summit for a long time. I don't think there's anything quite like the summit. It's fantastic. And we took a break last year, but that's all right. A lot of people did. But we're back this year, and all of a sudden, COVID comes. Talk about leading through the blizzard. We've there's a popular article that's made the rounds that a lot of us have read, and a lot, churches are doing it. You're doing it.
Yeah.
But your whole deal is gathering people,
Yeah.
and now you're hit with this. So, what about leadership right now? What do we do?
Yeah, and so how do you begin to look at contingency plans and contingency options, and how do you make decisions around which one is best, and then begin to determine the direction that you go? And that's really been, Jim, the journey that we've been on, because we were anticipating, well, this will only last a while. We'll still be able to do our gatherings in the summer in August, and we're looking and realize that we're going to be virtually digital in every place that we are. And so we have probably 400 public host sites that'll gather this year digitally. And then we'll have close to 600 more, what we call Summit View or Summit View 50s, which are really private experiences of the summit. And the last 2 or 3 years, we were actually doing beta testing of what digital delivery of the summit was like. And we were kind of anticipating going more this direction, but this kind of just accelerated the process far more than we anticipated this year. And so we anticipate probably about 70,000 people will attend the summit in the United States this year in August. Probably 50,000 will be through our host sites, and many of those are going to be digital. And so it's a whole different experience than it is kind of gathering in a church or gathering in a business auditorium situation like that. And so how do you begin to, we look at three things with the summit. We talk about the summit being content, which is world-class leadership content, and then connection, this whole idea of networking and relationship building. And then the last thing is community, and being able, again, to share in relationship together and grow and go the same way. And we really had to look and say, how are we going to be able to create digital community in this new format? So I have a lot of things. In fact, one of the things we're going to be doing, Jim, is just like what you were doing on the poll. So there'll be different kinds of polls and chats and different places for people to have interaction and be able to grow that way.
Which
too.
we've done every year, actually.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
when we've been so we've kind of been virtual anyway, because we've been in virtual sites. We've just been together, and now you're going to have people who are
Yeah.
independent. I guess sitting by themselves. That's going
Or
to be
doing
weird. I think
viewing parties maybe at their homes. Are you
that's going to
now?
be really different.
You still have, or probably you can't make plans just yet for August, but have you thought about? Because I have had the fortune of being on that stage, which if no one has ever seen the stage, it's bigger than the Kodak Theater, which is where the Oscars are held. It's insane. It's a real production. Are you guys going to be hosting in person at all? Because
Yeah, so we're in South Barrington, and the village of South Barrington originally said you can have 50 people in your 7,000 seat auditorium. And we said, we're not sure that that's going to work. Our production crew is more than 50 people. And so
Right.
we've negotiated to have a few more, but we're really not looking at an audience. In fact, what we're going to do is rather than the auditorium, we're going to build on the stage, kind of a place for people to sit. And it's really going to be more of a broadcast than a viewer event in some ways. And so, excuse me, our team is trying to figure out how best to do that. We'll actually probably end up with 3 different sets on the stage. We'll have interviews that'll follow up with questions that'll come again from people that are watching the summit, and all different kind of experiences that way. So the auditorium, the seats, we don't have approval to really have an audience, but we're going to be able to stream the summit hopefully anywhere and everywhere this summer.
That's awesome.
But-
Well, I would say, I think Jim would echo, we've talked about it a lot. In these times, we need leadership. We need people to know best and to hear from some real amazing leaders and speakers and writers, authors. I know you always have such an interesting mix of individuals. So I think for
So,
one, am
so
excited to
Tom,
hear.
will this change things permanently? You think? I mean, do you think there'll be a piece of this? That's what we're asking in church life too.
Yeah.
Does this have a permanent, lasting effect? And I think it does, but I can't quite figure out how yet. So, what do you think?
Yeah, we see this, and what's going to happen digitally is being able to increase kind of the scope and the scale and the reach of the summit through a digital audience. It's interesting, even in talking to pastors who were kind of online before too, they said 99% of the people that would visit our church on a Sunday morning usually watched it online first. And we may see then the digital becoming an on-ramp for the summit, where maybe the first year they'll watch it digitally, but the gathering and being in connection and community is really a high value. And for us, we really look and we say, it is about inspiring and equipping with regard to world-class leadership, but we're really about igniting transformation, seeing the work of God in people's lives, seeing vision for cities and countries to change, and the leadership that's willing to step in and have the courage to do that. And we see that transformation piece really does happen in those gatherings. And so we're still going to be pretty committed to that. But this could be an easy on-ramp or first step to participating in the summit in the future.
So, Aaron, about the summit this year. So
Yeah.
we want, it's a different year, but we want people to be involved because the summit just gives incredible value. So what are your questions about the summit this year?
Yeah. Like, I mean, well, I'm for one. Who's your favorite headliner that's coming?
Favorite headliner. Trying to look at
I
who's
know
that.
who I saw on the lineup that I was excited to hear from again, but
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Marcus Buckingham is always high on
he's
the
always
list.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Amy Edmondson, who's a leadership and management professor at Harvard, is pretty phenomenal.
Okay.
Uh, Beth Comstock
Yep.
is on the board of Nike and was with
Yep.
GE and NBC in the area of innovation, is going to
Yeah.
be awesome as well. TD Jakes,
That's
right?
that's the one. That's
Yeah.
I'm so excited to hear from him.
And
He can get you excited. I can tell
yeah,
you. Been
Yeah.
yeah,
there,
Yep.
done that.
and we're really looking forward to uh, him being there. And then kind of one that people haven't heard that much about is Dr. Tomas Chamorro Premuzic, who's a professor at the College of London over in Britain, and
Okay.
again works in the area of people development and talent development. And I think he's going to be a little bit of surprise for people.
Very
Good.
cool.
It's
Very
exciting.
cool.
So the
Well,
dates, I know them, but
yeah.
the dates are
Yep, August 6 and 7, Thursday,
August 6th
Friday.
and 7th.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
want people involved. It's going to be different this year, but I think it'll be great. And this has just been an important part for us of our leadership development.
Yeah. I
So
can't wait. I
yeah,
won't be able to be in the prison. Our prison is unfortunately not going to do it till October. So I will be a person who will host a digital watching party if anyone wants to join me. And then if
that'd be
anyone
different
wants to go to the prison with me in October, I am willing to always.
because usually I'm on the stage talking to you, Aaron, at the prison. I can't do that this year.
Yeah.
So
I know I
yeah.
won't be in the prison this well. And again, I'll go in October, but yeah,
Two
I'll
great
be
options.
missing it. Yeah, I'll be missing it.
So Tom, it is world class. It's the best, and that's why we continue to do it. Even when it's been tough to move forward, we just felt like there was nothing else quite like it. So we hope all of our people will get engaged and register and get involved. Anything else you want to tell us about the summit?
No, I just think that how God works through this summit is really pretty amazing. Even Aaron's story about having a heart for prisons, and what we see again and again is that God begins to kind of plant a vision in people's lives that comes and saying, "How can I make a difference? How can I influence?" Because everyone has influence, and it's just a matter of where that is or what that environment is, and being willing to step out and do that. And the summit helps give people enough courage to take those steps of faith and begin to do that. And we just are excited to be part of how God works through the summit around the world globally. And know that if people participate, they're going to have, again, just a lot of encouragement, inspiration, and God's going to show up, I think, and have a very special whisper for them too.
Yeah, well, we're grateful to be part of it.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic every year. I can't tell you how much I've benefited before we hosted it.
Yeah.
So years ago, I used to have to go to Willow Creek to experience that, and I did. And it's just a privilege to be a part of this. So, Dom, thanks for the work you
Yeah.
do, and
Thank you.
keep us posted.
Hey, thanks so much. Thanks for your partnership.
Looking forward to the summit this year. We really are.
Yeah.
All right, so Aaron, let's see.
Thanks, Dom.
Let's see. Thanks, Dom. Let's see what our poll says now. So
All
it's changed, but it hasn't changed. A lot of people have responded. We've got a lot of responses, and yet the responses are still the same. So there you go. Going to the USA. Yeah, it's all.
Still no camping. Surprising.
And still no international.
I just am not
I
surprised.
just think somebody's going to do that. Somebody is. Well, let me introduce you to one of my friends that I think you need to know. So
Yes.
I seriously think you two need to know one another. First of all, Karen Swallow Pryor. Karen was my partner in Soul Cafe at Rivermont in Lynchburg when we first started Soul Cafe, and she's just an awesome person. A really great. One of my all-time favorite parishioners is Karen Swallow Pryor. Karen. And also, Karen, you might want to talk a little about, just for fun, our Celtic Christian service. Do you still miss it?
I do still
I
miss
do,
it.
I do too.
Yeah.
And we do a contemplative service here. It's not the same, I got to tell you. And then Aaron Keating, one of my all-time favorite parishioners also. And you two are a lot alike in weird ways. So let me just make some observations here.
I just need to
Intriguing.
hear the
I
weird.
gotta tell you this. This is how. So you don't fit a stereotype. You don't fit into somebody's categorized political. This is how it works. I follow this train, I do this. So Karen, I always found, made her decisions based on principle, no matter whether people agreed with her or not. And I always love that about her. And Aaron, you're like that too. You can be a fly in the ointment in the same way and make your decisions in kind of intriguing ways based on, what you think is right and true. And the other thing about the two of you, and this is weird, it is weird that I'm involved in with the two of you in Soul Cafe, is that you both so love literature, and you both think that literature is the paragon of virtue, the place you discover virtue. So I've told you, Aaron, for a long time, you needed to read this book.
Yep.
And actually, Karen's written a couple of books, but this is the best known of hers. So, and you needed to know her, and you guys, you can talk, and I'll listen because I think you'll have a fascinating conversation. So Karen, good to have you on the show. How are you?
It's good to be with you. It's like almost not quite like old times since we're
Well,
on Zoom, right? It's just,
well,
yeah.
in old times, we were in the Soul Cafe at Rivermont, and you did Shoe Show. You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah.
I
So
could never forget Shoe Show.
that was fun times.
I
And
mean, what is shoe show? Jeez,
shoe,
Karen.
oh,
I gotta
all
know
right,
these
Karen.
tricks of the
Who
Tell her
are-
trade.
about Shoe Show.
You, oh, well, I like shoes and I wear them. And sometimes people think they are unusual. And so that became sort of part of Soul Cafe is Jim would call me up to show off my shoes that
It was
night.
part of our, and we had a song for it. Roy did her husband Roy did a little ditty,
ditty.
yeah,
A
for a
little
shoe show,
jingle.
and she'd come up and show that. And then we do the same stuff we do in Soul Cafe, which is to interview
Oh, cool.
interesting people and talk about, theology and politics and what's going on in the culture. So Karen, it's so good to have you because I think you're a leading light in evangelical circles. I really do. And I'm so proud that you're my friend and that you were my parishioner. I'd like to think I added just any little thing to what you are, because I think you bring so much to the table. But let's talk about, let's start with your book and then we'll get to some other stuff. So you wrote a book about literature. It's technically about reading. It's about it is about reading, but I think the whole book is about virtue and about. So how can I read a book about reading, about literature, and suddenly find that somebody is talking to me about many elements of virtue? So I quoted you 2 weeks ago in a sermon about humility. It's a great quote about humility. I can read it. I've got it right here. But what's the interchange?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So I started out just wanting to write a book about books, about reading and the things we can learn from them. But I've been influenced in recent years by the work of James K.A. Smith and his liturgical anthropology. And he and others have written about how for the past, few decades in evangelicalism, we've been influenced primarily by something called Christian worldview, which is, thinking about things biblically and then applying our principles that way. But Smith says that that worldview isn't enough because before, he's channeling Augustine and talking about how we are creatures of desires and heart before we're creatures of thinking and mind, that we love before we do, and so we can actually develop our loves through practices and habits that then become, of course, virtues, which is where I picked up. And so I wanted to kind of demonstrate how the habit of reading has shaped me over my life, and not just from reading books to get lessons from them, but how it actually reading literature. I mean, literary fiction, classic literature is my area. Poetry, novels, literature. That when a lifetime of reading good works well actually shapes the way we think, how we think, our empathy, our perspectives. And so I decided to just kind of break that down in terms of the classical virtues and kind of separate it out. And none of the virtues really can be separated from one another, but we can still, talk about them separately.
So
That's
it's a
kind of how
great,
it happened.
it's really a great book. The book is on Reading Well. And Karen, I would have read it and bought it had you not sent me a copy. Thank you for the copy with a nice note in the front. But it is just really a terrific book. Actually, I didn't pick it up for a few weeks after you sent it, and then I started reading it and thought this is just a tremendous work. I think it's really good. So I've quoted it more than once. I happened to send you an email when I quoted it this time, but so let me read you, Aaron, one quote. Let's see how Aaron responds to this quote. So this is one of my favorite quotes from the book. There's something in the very form of reading, the shape. I got to put on my glasses to read it. The shape of the action itself that tends toward virtue, the attentiveness necessary for deep reading, the kind of reading we practice in reading literary works, as opposed to skimming news stories or reading instructions, requires patience. The skills of interpretation and evaluation require prudence. Even the simple decision to set aside time to read in a world rife with so many other choices competing for our attention requires a kind of temperance. There's just prudence, temperance, virtue. There's a lot there. So, Aaron, what do you think about that?
I mean, I agree with all of it. And so many thoughts are coming to my head because, of course, I am a big book nerd, but a big book nerd in the sense that I do believe that reading has so enriched my life. And I wasn't a childhood reader. So I would argue I haven't read a ton of the classics, and I don't have a genre that I really stick to, but I can tell you that when I intentionally picked it up as a young adult and realized the discipline it took me to sit down and then to really let my brain kind of seep into the book that I was reading, how instructive it really is, and how it is different than when you're skimming articles. And I mean, I think you worded it perfectly. And my first question to you would be, were you always a reader from a child? I mean, was this a practice? Because a lot of people do ask me now as an adult, and I'm sure you get this question all the time because you wrote a book about reading books. And I have a podcast about reading books. And so everyone's always like, oh, well, you must have been a bookworm your whole life. I'm like, nope, I wasn't. But were you? Because classics might lend itself to thinking you were.
Yeah, your instinct is right. Yes, I
Yeah.
grew up reading, loving books. I was the proverbial girl with her nose always in a book.
Yeah.
So I just loved reading as a child, and was lost in books, and
Yeah.
was an English major and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, but I also grew up. I'm old enough to have grown up in a time where we didn't have Facebook and
Yeah.
Twitter and social media or the internet, and I lived in the country. I'm an introvert. And so it was just kind of a natural
Yeah.
thing for me to do. And so many, now I don't know what would have happened if I were born in the world today where there's so many other
Right.
distractions.
Well, you're on it. I mean, I don't know anybody who's more on social media than you are. So,
That's
Yeah.
true.
I'm a Luddite. I'm not in any.
oh, she's
Yeah.
everywhere. Karen is
Yeah.
everywhere. I don't
I
know if
still have
somebody
my,
does it for
yeah.
you or you do it. I think a lot of it is you though, because I can hear your voice.
Oh, it's all
And
me. I don't
it's all
know.
you.
It's all
Yeah.
me,
So
embarrassingly. So
you
yes.
got into that somehow. So
Mhm.
I just think. So first of all, your capacity to. I've always been amazed by your capacity to empathize with people who are in different situations than you are, and whether that's so. Just Aaron, just so you'll know, Karen is the first person I ever knew who called herself a Christian feminist and defined that really well in a way that she helped me understand gender and the Bible as well as anyone I've ever known, including my professors in seminary. And now that she is teaching in my seminary, I guess I might have been taught by her at some point. But um, somehow you've gained a capacity to empathize with people who are different than you. So we're in a moment where we see people around us who maybe we're not like. The African American community is crying out from the streets. I think I understand and hear the cries. But how does reading and how do you gain an empathy for other people that are different than you are?
Well, there are now a lot of studies that show that reading literature, specifically literary fiction, does this. But I knew it a long time before. I think it's just simply that when you read a good work of literature, not just, Pulp Fiction or, or mystery or suspense novel. I mean, I listen to those on Audible, and they're fine, it's fine entertainment. But when you read literary fiction, which is nuanced and ambiguous, you enter the world of the narrator, whoever that is. It could be a character, it could be, an outside narrator, but you are kind of forced to see the world through that perspective, or through multiple perspectives, if there are different points of view included in the work. And as you're reading a story, you're making judgments as you go along. You're kind of in the world of the character, thinking and experiencing like the character, but you're also you. So you also get to judge that character, like, oh, maybe you shouldn't be thinking this or feeling this or doing this, but this, the narrator's telling me why. So there's always this tension between yourself as an outside person in the situation, but you're immersed in the situation. So reading literary fiction itself is an exercise in um in juggling different perspectives. And so you spend your lifetime doing that. It just becomes, it's really no different if you're sitting in an office with a colleague having a discussion,
Right.
and you're trying to interpret what they're saying, what they're feeling. You're using the same part of your brain as you're using when you're doing the same, reading about a character in a book.
I
Yeah.
feel like I
Yeah.
can't stop nodding at that because I've and I don't know if you found this, but even during this whole time, Jim, to your point, a lot of people are saying, um, how do we learn more? I hesitate to suggest nonfiction. I think a lot of people will come to a nonfiction book, and if they look at anything about the author, they might just presuppose their bias about what that author is going to be saying, where they're going to be leaning. Even though it's technically nonfiction, people will question, well, what facts, all those types of things. And so my suggestion through this whole period has been books that I think are literary fiction that could touch people, that could help people get into the character. Exactly like you're saying, Karen, is how do you and it also teaches people, at least I feel like I've learned from reading, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is how to hold things in tension. So to your point, like where you're holding your perspective in tension with the perspective of the novel. And I feel like I've been able to navigate things a little bit differently because I'm used to that carrying of tension while I'm reading a book and trying to figure out how I feel about it. And even when I started my podcast, that was my whole point. It was like, we're both going to come to black and white text together, and we're both going to be carrying that thing in tension and trying to figure out what we think about the book. And then to hear two people discuss a book and how different they might have interpreted characters or actions of the book, draw people out to talk about, well, but why did you think the character was like that? I didn't think that at all. So I don't know how you feel about that, sort of the intention thing, because I think you worded it very well, and I hadn't said it the way that you said it, but I think I'm gonna steal that from you if that's okay.
Please do, yes.
Yeah,
No, I think that's exactly what happens when we read literary fiction.
yeah,
So you Karen, you're fascinating because you love the Bible and you know it so well. So I can't count the number of discussions I had with you on the Bible, and you love good preaching and teaching, and you are a verbal teacher. I remember you used to say to me, Jim, good preaching is drama, and good preaching is story. And you really, you always were a great encourager of preaching. When how do these things come together? So when I talk about believers, maybe I don't have many here who would say this, but maybe I have someone say the Bible's enough. I don't need more books. I just need the Bible. And you would always say it's a conversation between the Word of God and the community of faith. And by the way, you have a lot to say about how we read in community. And then beyond that, we have this broader conversation with the culture. And that's what you loved about Soul Cafe, was this conversation we had about this nexus point. So what would you say about that?
Okay, about so the way the culture and the Bible and Christianity sort of
All
all.
that, all
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And
Well, okay,
preach
just a little bit.
how we preach and teach into it,
Yeah.
the whole thing. How does it all come together?
Well, it comes together because preaching and teaching and conversation and understanding and the empathy that we've been talking about occurs through the medium of language. And what is the Christian faith but an expression of the God who is the Word? And so, if Jesus is the Word and the Bible is God's Word, and that is how we know Him, and as Protestant Baptist type people. That's a big thing that we believe in, is, that this is God's word. Jesus is the word. Well, anytime, so this is also, a Protestant Reformation thing. I mean, we're Protestants, and we emphasize the word over image. And so to understand the way that words work and the way language works is really to understand our faith. And so so our facility and our appreciation and our celebration of all language as an expression of God's image in us is intricately and inseparably connected to our understanding of the word, capital W and small w. There's a great passage I quote a lot, from, and I don't remember if it's in on Reading Well or not, because I don't remember what makes it and what doesn't. But Neil Postman, in his classic book Amusing Ourselves to Death, talks early in the book about, who was writing as sort of a secular Jew, or culturally Jewish, not religious, but with that background. He talks about how the commandment not to make graven images, which is just pictures, was a signal from the God of the Bible to his people that he is a God who wants to communicate with us through the abstraction of language, as opposed to the immediacy of an image. And that whole book is really about, image-based culture versus literate culture. So I highly recommend it, if you want to learn more about that. But there just is something different about the way that God is the word and the way that he relates to us through the word. And so all of this reading that we do is an expression of that, and it's one that we need to steward well. And so, yeah, I don't even know if I answered your question.
Well, you did, and also I think there's the piece that I've always loved. You taught me about how beauty is the best representation of the best argument for the existence of God is beauty in literature, in art, in many things. I think that plays in here too. Is the capacity of human beings to create beauty as a sign of the image of God? Can you talk about that for a second before I read a couple more of your quotes?
Sure. And and it's not just our capacity to create beauty,
Or
but it's
comprehend it too?
yeah, it's right, even to appreciate it, to
Yeah,
comprehend it,
yeah.
right? I mean, because animals don't comprehend beauty. So the fact that we can recognize beauty, and that we can create beauty, again, another reflection of God's image in us. Um, I do think that is the best argument for the existence of God, the God, the kind of God that is revealed in His Word, and His Word is beautiful. I mean, the Bible uses a variety of literary forms. It uses beauty in the Psalms, in the Proverbs. It uses different literary types and forms. And again, as we understand the way language works even outside the Bible, the more that we can understand the language that's inside the Bible. And you cannot separate form from content in art. The medium is the message, as Marshall McLuhan said.
Mhm.
And the form something takes is the content, in the same way that Christ himself is the form of God, who loved us enough to sacrifice himself for us. So the words that we read, and the form they take is important. So for reading books that are just badly written, are banal, are easy, are shallow, and that's what fills the diets of a lot of people, including Christians, then we are naturally going to develop a kind of faith, and theology that is as shallow as those things.
So let's talk about where we are right now. I think you've been very vocal in a number of areas. I mean, anybody who will look at you, they can just look you up on Twitter. They can see everything. Every thought you have is there, including what kind of computer you want to
Oh,
buy. And it
you
came
have
today,
no
right?
idea how many thoughts are
So
not there.
just to know, she may not have taken my advice on much, but she bought the computer I suggested to her.
I did.
So you'll love it. So anyway, that's another story. But you've been outspoken on everything from sexual harassment and abuse, and the maltreatment of women in our culture, the denigration of women in our culture, which you and I totally agree on. to in this day and time, as we have faced the ugly issue of racism in our culture and our original sin of slavery. You've been really adamant about that, despite the fact that I know that many people in your circle don't agree with you. And that's one thing I've always loved about you is you just stand where you stand based on what you think is the right virtue or principle. And I try to be that way too. And I really appreciate that about you. But what would you say about this moment we're in? You've been really vocal. So I'll read a quote from your book because it's all there. All the virtues you put there in advance. So you said justice in this world will ever and always be a matter of correcting, balancing, ever progressing, or regressing, never perfected. The injustice my friend's grandmother experienced in being a slave did not end with her life. That injustice forever shaped her children, her children's children, including my friend. My friend forgives those injustices, but even forgiveness cannot negate the ripple effects of the past. To pretend otherwise is itself a further injustice, which sounds like something you could have written in the last 2 weeks, but it's something you wrote 2 years ago.
Mm.
So this was the virtue you already claimed. So let's talk about where we are right now and why you feel so adamantly and vehemently about uh, speaking for those who cannot speak.
Well, I got my justice creds way back in the day when I was in my 20s in the pro-life movement, in opposing abortion, which is about as conservative a thing as you can do in modern America. And I'm still passionate about that issue of justice. And I'm just completely bewildered that as our culture faces other similar issues related to justice and human dignity and life, I don't know where all my conservative friends are because I'm
Yeah.
standing on the same principle that I have always been standing. And so, yeah, yes, justice is one of the most prevalent themes in the Bible from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And the fact that the church has been so negligent in that area, area, we're those ripple effects that I mentioned in that quote that you just read. That's what we're experiencing right now. If the church should have been standing against slavery 400 years ago, and some Christians were, some parts of the church were, but the ones who weren't prevailed for far too long. And to pretend that 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 those ripple effects don't continue to exist is not only foolish, but again, yeah, it's further injustice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you and I totally agree on this. I think we have to be consistent, uh, philosophically, theologically consistent. And I find that when people allow their philosophy and theology to be shaped by a political ideology instead of by what is right and what is wrong, I, I, I really don't understand that within the Church of Jesus Christ. And I think this is how I've always preached. And when I ran into you, I found someone who felt the way that I did, and a few others too. I think Aaron is like that too. We just we shape our values and we understand what the Word of God is saying to us, and we try to take a stand in the right place. And that doesn't always align with the world, and that's what the Bible tells us will be the case. I've always loved that you were so consistent, I think, in terms of your understanding, your philosophy and theology of ethical issues and justice issues. So I'm with you. I just think that's why I love your book. I think it's actually you too. I've always loved you and love your book, and I just think it's really amazing how consistent it is. So, Aaron, where does that take you?
Well, I think the thing that I would point out, because um, again, going back to the premise of the book and I don't know that everybody builds their opinions based on ideology. I think a lot of people build their opinions sometimes also on experience, and I do think again going into the idea of how richer your experience in life would be through reading is that if you happen to be, and I'll use the triggering word of privileged enough to live in circumstances that aren't privy to the judgment and the downright condemnation of who you are as a being. Reading is something that can expand your experiences in a way that you maybe can't personally experience them. And that's probably, I probably, Karen, would be singing from your song sheet of why I would encourage more people that sometimes they're sticking to ideology because they simply have not had the breadth of experience to understand it, and that doesn't make them bad people, but there
Of
are
course not.
ways in which you can expand your experience realm, if you will. It doesn't have to personally happen to you, but being able to read literary fiction can help you step into the world of someone else that potentially it has happened to, for you to expand your understanding of that feeling, that experience, I think. So that's where it led me, is because I think that's what I come up against a lot of the times, is sometimes people they just haven't experienced it. And there's plenty of things that I have such a heart for, that I just simply didn't experience in my real life, right? It wasn't a personal thing that happened to me, but I experienced it through reading. Even becoming a Christian from being raised a Jew, I mean, that came from reading a whole section of the Bible that wasn't available to me as a child, right? So I mean, just this idea that I was willing to expose myself to other things
Well,
that I
you just
learned.
paraphrased Karen's book.
Yeah.
That's it. So
Yeah. So I don't know. That's what I would encourage from that discussion. Karen and I.
you just agree, Karen?
I,
That's all?
I agree with yes, because she just paraphrased my book. So
She did. She did. There's actually
Well, I can't wait to
another.
read it now. Be
You've got
nodding
to
my
read
head
it,
the whole
and
time.
you got to have her on your podcast,
I'm
because I'm
definitely
telling you,
going to.
yeah.
Yeah,
first of all,
absolutely. We're going to.
you're both
We're
really
doing this.
fascinating,
Yeah.
and you enjoy each other. So this is another a quote from your book. Despair has encouraged some to place more faith in political leaders than in biblical principles. In turn, some Christians, disillusioned over what other believers have said or done, have chosen to disavow their family or faith, giving in to despair. To despair over politics, regardless of which side of the political divide one lands on, as many Christians have done in the current apocalyptic political climate, is to forget that we are but wayfarers in this land, choosing hope, whether amid the annihilation of the world or merely a political breakdown, is virtuous. Talk just a little bit about. I think of all the people I know, you talk about virtue in a more fascinating way than anybody else. So, what is virtue, and why
yeah,
should we have it?
that's a good question to ask. I mean, so a basic definition of virtue, I mean, the most basic is excellence. And yet, and so what Aristotle and philosophers after him, particularly Christian ones, because Aristotle was not a Christian, and but that's okay. Christians came along and refined his ideas. You know, the excellencies that all human beings are capable of are the ones that have been identified throughout history as the virtues. And what makes a quality virtuous is that it avoids the either an excess or a deficiency of the quality. So perhaps maybe the example I like to use to try to explain this the best is that courage is something that requires, say, boldness. But if you have too much of it, it's actually not the virtue of courage anymore. It's just rashness, and it's reckless and destructive. If you have too little, then it's cowardice. So for every virtue, too much of it is a vice, and
Mm.
too little of it is also a vice. And so that's what makes it so tricky. It's basically moderation, moderation between an excess and a deficiency, and we can see that in every single of the classical virtues, what too much looks like and what too little looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned more about virtue from you than anybody I've known. So I think the way you speak about that has been helpful. I've preached it, by the way, and quoted you a couple of times, and I think you're onto something when we need to think about the virtue or the nature of our lives. So before we get off here, let's talk about how the community responds right now. So what should the community say? So this is also in your book quite a bit. You say, but the civilization or the cultivation and expression of virtue and vice, uh, and the formation of conscience is not merely an individual act, but a communal one. In addition to shaping individual experience and character, great literature has a role in forming the communal conscience and public virtue. We can understand a great deal about culture, its strengths, its weaknesses, its blind spots, its struggles. When we examine the literature, it not only produces, but reveres. So, as a culture right now, so let's talk about multiple cultures: the culture of the church, the culture of Christianity in America, or in our little circle, evangelicalism, and then our broader culture, you know, what are we after? What do we need to absorb right now, and where do we need to go? I feel a lot of defensiveness and a lot of aggressiveness,
Mhm.
but not much capacity to read each other, and to read literature, and to read the Bible, and to absorb and to move together in a progressive way. So, what would help us?
Well, in terms of the culture, it's so interesting, and this is really what, this has been going on for a while, so it's not completely coincidence that I decided to focus on virtue. But we live in a culture that is defined by the exact opposite of virtue, because we live in a cultural moment that is so polarized. So this idea of being polarized, which again everyone knows, we talk about that, but if we think about it in terms of it being the opposite of virtue, that might be helpful, because polarizing is going to one extreme or the other,
Mhm.
whereas virtue is moderating the tension. So even as we're faced, it's just, this is such a surreal moment in our
Mhm.
country. We're faced with this moment where we are seeing extreme injustice that has been going on for hundreds of years kind of erupting, in response. There's just been this suppression of rage and anger and righteous anger, and it is now exploding. I mean, Langston Hughes wrote a poem about this 100 years ago. What happens to a raisin in the sun? And, there's a whole poem about it. Does it explode is the last line. And so we are seeing a counter swing, and then in response to that, rather than responding to that in a moderate way or a moderating way, we are seeing people respond on the opposite extreme, sort of denying the cause, denying the understanding of it. And so we continue to polarize instead of trying to sort of, not throw out the baby with the bathwater is another way of looking at it, to kind of to not accept another act of injustice, but to also try to correct the pendulum swing back to the middle. I mean, the chapter that I wrote on justice focused on Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, which is about
Mhm.
the French Revolution, and then the counter swing response, which was the Reign of Terror. And so we saw, the Who got it right way back when. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? I mean, we see this over and over again in history of one pendulum swing to one
Mhm.
extreme being overcorrected by going to the opposite end.
Yes.
So the way that literature can help us with that is because we can see how all of these things have been done before in different contexts. This is not new. We could actually learn about, avoiding the terror. The revolution's already taking place. We can avoid the terror by, seeing how Charles Dickens addressed that in his book and so many others. We can deal with COVID better when we understand that, plagues, and the Black Death have occurred in civilization every 100 years or so, for as long as we've been around. That this isn't really new. It's hard, it's bad as we're going through it, but if learning from
It's
literature,
not novel.
right, exactly, it's not novel. So that moderates,
Despite its name, it's not
that
novel.
Yeah.
that helps us to understand. So anyways, there are just so many ways that we need to moderate these polarizing forces in our culture.
So I
um,
just think you're so on target. I preached a whole series on this called "End Not Of" on polarization, and I wish I'd talked to you during that. Maybe you listened to a couple of them. I don't know. You'd compliment me if you did. But are you saying that when we talk about people on the polls, that
mhm.
they have bought into one ideal, and they've overloaded on that ideal to the expense of a balance? So
Exactly.
so if we would listen to both sides, they both have ideals we need to hear
Yes.
that need to be balanced together. Is that what you're saying?
That's what virtue is. That's exactly what we need to do.
That's an amazing thought, I think. I think we need to hear more about this. I've heard a lot about this already, but I just think I admire the way you put this into words that I understand. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks,
Maybe
What
we'll
you
have
Jim.
you
got?
back.
What are you working on really quickly before
Yeah,
we
you
let you
writing
go?
another
Oh
book?
yeah, I'm
Stuff.
working on a
Let's make sure
six
we get that.
volume series of classics being published by B&H, where I write introductions from a Christian perspective and reflection questions. The first two just came out in March. a new edition of Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, beautiful cloth-bound volumes, and Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Oh, this is very written for the moment as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so there'll be 4 more books coming out, and this summer I'm working on 2 of those. So
Aaron,
Awesome.
Aaron, you two really do need to talk.
Yeah.
It scares me that you might,
But
it'll be your fault.
but seriously, 2 of
exactly.
my favorite parishioners of all time, and for the same reason, the capacity to think clearly. So Karen, I dearly love you. Thank you for being with us, and we'll
Wonderful.
have you back on when you get your new stuff out. We'll get you back on again because I haven't heard enough. I need more. So, so Aaron will tell me we got to have her back. We'll get you back on. Is that good?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks for
absolutely.
being
Thanks
here.
for being here.
So everybody's been responding to our poll. So I just got to ask you, this is totally not virtuous. This is off. What are you doing for vacation, Karen?
You know we don't go on vacation.
Well, 26.
You tried to get us to go on vacation all
did.
the time.
I
we
did.
we live on vacation.
Take a break once in a while. You're so
I love to
intense.
be home.
Yeah. So well, 26% said they're not taking one at all, and 5% said staycay, which I don't know. That sounds like the same thing to me. 32% said going to the USA. 5% said we finally did get some campers in there, and then don't know yet is 32%. Nobody's going overseas, I guess.
Still doesn't surprise me, but okay.
I don't know. I'm not either, but
Speaking
anyway.
of vacation, I'm getting back to my vacation now.
All right. Well, you get back to your vacation, then Karen, you go on one.
It was
Okay.
great
It's
to meet
good to
you,
do once in
Karen.
a while.
We'll have
Good to
to
meet you
talk
too.
on the podcast.
Yes, I would
do
love
my-
that.
my
I'll
meeting.
call you, Karen. Give my love to Roy
I
and
will.
ask him, will he come on and play for us on Soul Cafe?
Okay,
sometime?
I will.
Like for old time's sake.
Yeah.
And we maybe we could do a show. What do you think?
We'll see.
Okay.
I'm wearing a
All
lot
right.
more flatter shoes these days.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I understand. All
Yeah.
right. Okay, friends. It's been great to have you on Soul Cafe, and keep in touch. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.